We are right around a quarter of the way through the 2025 NFL season, and some teams like the Jaguars are doing better than we thought they might, while the Texans are definitely failing their expectations. Today, I'm going to be looking at every AFC team and putting them into tiers based on if they're passing their expectations or how good we thought they would be, or if teams are surprising us but in a good way. Maybe some teams are just in between, like, yeah, they haven't quite failed their expectations for the year, but if we're being honest, they could be doing a little better, but they're not doing bad enough to say that they're failing their current expectations. Or if a team is just straight up failing expectations for the year, that's the final tier. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into this, and I'm just going to be going down every division in the AFC, and we'll get through all of it. Let's go ahead and get into it. The Bills have started 4-0, and as we all thought, are looking like a championship caliber team. After losing to the Chiefs in the playoffs again, the Bills are looking to finally get over the hump this season, and a 4-0 start definitely isn't surprising and will help them do that. Josh Allen is playing great ball so far, coming off an MVP, but the Bills haven't played any true tests so far. Even with that, they're playing how they should be and are meeting expectations as of now, a quarter of the way through the year. The Patriots are 2-2 and are looking solid. May looked a little rough at times in week 1, but has been playing pretty good so far throughout his second season, and is top 6 as of now in passing yards in the league. I personally wasn't expecting a playoff year from the Pats like some people are saying they can go, but I think they're on the right track to have a solid season and finishing right around 500, and as of now they sit 2-2. Look, I didn't think the Jets were going to be a playoff team, but I thought they would have beat the Dolphins and maybe the Steelers. Of course, that Steelers game was super close, and they had plenty of good moments in the Dolphins game, like one of the first drives, when they just plowed all the way down the field till a goal line fumble. But without a single win on their record, the Jets aren't meeting expectations right now, even though they are pretty low. Some people's expectations are higher than others for the Dolphins, and I feel like when there is this much money tied up around the team, and there are quite a few talented players on the team, you don't want to be 1-3 with your only win being against the 0-4 Jets. Now, if Tyreek out, I'm not sure how this team will fare throughout the year, but even with him, I'm not sure they would have been elite. Moving to the Colts, they've been a positive surprise so far, and of course, because we're moving to the Colts, we're moving on to the AFC South in general. But the Colts have had a pretty solid roster over the past couple years, but the Anthony Richardson experiment was holding them back a bit, and they haven't had decent quarterback play from anyone else when AR has been out. When they brought in Daniel Jones, no one thought him starting would actually be good for the Colts. They didn't think the play would be there, and it would be cement Anthony Richardson as a bust. It would cement him as a bust. But only one of those things has been proven true because Daniel Jones has been very consistent so far. Although they lost to the Rams, they are 3-1, have been winning big against the bad teams, and won a tight one against the Broncos. I don't think they're going to be making a Super Bowl run, but they have been better than expected, and Daniel Jones is looking to revive his career right now. I assume the Titans would be one of the worst teams again this season, and they are. I will say there isn't a whole lot going for this team as they have scored the least amount of points through 4 weeks in the entire league. They're also near top in points allowed so far throughout the season. They really are just a bad team, and I hope Cam Ward can overcome this part in his career. I did put this in the in-between category just because, of course, the expectations already weren't there, so it's kind of hard to say they're failing expectations. But just with how the team's playing, saying that they're meeting any sort of positive expectations just doesn't feel right. The Texans are currently 1-3 and sit near the bottom of the AFC South. The O-line has been absolutely atrocious so far, and CJ Stroud behind this line has understandably looked pretty bad. The Texans' running backs haven't been playing great either, and something surprising, though, is that the Texans have actually showed or allowed the least amount of points in the league, but the offense just hasn't been able to score. Of course, I know that this defense is a little bit better, but sitting 1-3, allowing the least amount of points, you think they would be able to win more than just one game throughout the first 4 weeks. They've only put up over 20 points once this season, though, and it was against the Titans. They only needed 15 to beat the Rams and 18 against the Jags, but the offense has not been able to move the ball. And with that said, the Texans are definitely failing expectations so far. Moving on to the final AFC South teams, the Jaguars have definitely been a positive surprise. They've been very solid so far, and I thought the Texans would be taking this division, but as we just discussed, they're not doing so hot right now. And I really thought the Jags would finish probably in one of those bottom 2 spots. But so far, they did beat the Texans head-to-head and are second in the AFC South. They also took down the 49ers last week and been playing really solid ball. They're currently near the middle of league in points scored, but their defense has been top 5 in points allowed. PFF has them ranked as the 4th best defense, and they have led the league in turnovers with 9 through only 4 games. Even with an average offense, the Jags as a team have been better than I thought they would be, and are looking to make a potential playoff push this year. Look guys, we are halfway through the video, and if you've made it this far, you might as well go ahead and like, and at least comment if you're agreeing or disagreeing with me so far. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of it. Moving to the AFC West, even with a loss against the Giants, the Chargers have been a great team so far. They may even be better than some thought they would be, with the defense playing how they are and Herbert commanding the offense, being top 5 in the league for passing yards. It has been a very good start for the Chargers. Currently leading the AFC West, it wouldn't surprise me if they won the division considering the Chiefs' slow start and how the Broncos could be playing better up to this part of the year. Of course, it's a long season and the Broncos are only a game behind, but we'll just have to see how it plays out for the Chargers. But this hot start will definitely be good for them making a playoff push. The Raiders to me are sitting somewhere in between, and I know some people had the Raiders as a playoff team, but I didn't. Of course, the 1-3 start isn't good, but at least Genty is starting to put it together. Geno Smith is leading the league in interceptions, and the O-line hasn't been the best so far. The defense is bottom half of the league in yards allowed, and PFF has them ranked as the 25th defense in the league. There's honestly not a whole lot of good to say about the Raiders, but hey, they did win a game. The Chiefs are always contenders with Mahomes at quarterback, but through the first 4 weeks, they've been pretty rough. They lost to the Eagles and Chargers, but have had back-to-back wins against the Ravens and Giants. Of course, the Ravens haven't looked right so far, and the Giants are the Giants. Even during these wins, the Chiefs' offense hasn't looked as dynamic as normal. If I'm being honest, I think they'll figure it out, especially when they get Rashee Rice back from suspension. But the Chiefs, as of now, are failing expectations just because this is a team with Pat Mahomes and a team coming off a Super Bowl. Of course, it was a Super Bowl loss. But the team just hasn't looked quite right so far, but I think they'll adjust decent enough throughout the year. I put the Broncos somewhere in between, and they're sitting at 2-2 right now. Isn't just quite where I thought they'd be. They did good winning their first gimme against the Titans, although they were a little sloppy, and they took down the Burrowless Bengals pretty easy. Now, they lost against the Colts and Chargers on game-losing field goals for the Broncos. The defense has been mostly elite so far, though, leading the league in sacks and being top 10 in total yards against. They're tied second in the league, only allowing 67 points so far throughout the year. The only reason I put them in the in-between is due to the fact that Bo Nix hasn't been consistent enough, and the offense hasn't made the leap we thought they would yet. I do think the Bengals game could be a turning point, though, and I believe they'll be just fine by the end of the year and sitting somewhere in a wild card spot. Moving on to the AFC North, the final division of the video. I by no means thought the Steelers would be bad, but they have been much better than I thought they would be. We know the defense is elite, being near top of the league in turnovers, but I wasn't sure how Rodgers and the offense would perform. Rodgers has played pretty solid so far, although not necessarily being special, but he's getting the job done. They're kind of just finding ways to win right now, though, but at the end of the day, they've looked better than I thought, and I think that this has been a pretty good start for them, and I would say that they've been kind of surprising, but in a positive way, of course. Did anyone have high expectations for the Browns? They played spoiler in Green Bay, and that was fun for them, but Joe Flacco was playing pretty bad ball, and they're going to switch to Dylan Gabriel this upcoming week. The defense is mostly meeting expectations, though, and we'll get to watch them dominate throughout the year. I have the Browns as a team meeting expectations just because they already really weren't that high, and playing spoiler against the Packers has just gotten them a win so far, so that's pretty fun for them. The Ravens' defense has honestly looked terrible so far. They lost a close game against the Lions and an even closer game against the Bills, but the defense has been allowing over 35 points per game against teams not named the Browns, and they have allowed the most total points in the league so far. Of course, we saw early defensive struggles last season, but they turned it around. This normally isn't magically fixed, though, so we'll have to watch and see what happens. And now Lamar's going to be missing a little bit of time, so it might be very hard for this team to get to 500 anytime soon. They are failing expectations through 4 weeks, but because this is such an elite roster, I think that by the end of the year they should be able to turn it around, but we will have to keep an eye on Lamar's injury. With the final team being the Bengals, they are 2-2, but this team has playoff aspirations, and getting beat big in back-to-back weeks is not showing yourselves to be a playoff team. Of course, Burrow is hurt, and he's most likely missing the season, and it kind of feels like this might be a lost season for the Bengals due to that. They didn't do enough in the offseason to improve their defense either, and this team's O-line is going to do zero favors for the run and pass game. Sorry, Bengals fans, but yes, you guys are kind of failing expectations right now, and honestly, I don't necessarily see it turning around for y'all this year. Thank you guys for watching. I'll release the NFC video next week to pair with this after all the Week 5 games happen, and I hope you guys have a good one.